The government is involved in a very systematic campaign of trying to condition public opinion to move Ireland away from neutrality and exploiting every dire crisis around the world to further make the case for reviewing neutrality and ultimately moving away from it and into a closer alliance with NATO and the EU militarisation project. The latest example is Sudan, and we're all witnesses to the scenes of Irish citizens, for example, trying to flee out of Sudan, and that has generated further discussion. But I wonder, wouldn't it be good for you to remind the public, something I raised, by the way, in the Dáil, that the militias that are now killing people in Sudan were funded by the European Union. Very explicitly funded. First of all, Bashir and Daglo Hemti, who's in charge of the RSF, got 200 to 400 to 600 million from the EU Trust Fund for Africa, which he boasted he was getting from Europe in order to stop Sudanese people leaving Sudan, but which actually has been used to arm the militias that have cracked down on the revolution in 2018 and are now being used to kill Sudanese people and indeed threaten Irish and EU citizens in Sudan. Shouldn't we remember the EU's implication in the horror that we're witnessing in Sudan?
I just want to thank deputies for their questions. Just once again at the outset, just allow me to be very, very clear, the government has no proposals to apply for NATO membership or join any military alliance or any mutual defence pact. I'm happy to give that assurance in the Chamber today. We are, however, a NATO partner for peace, and we are involved in the European Union's battle groups, and we are part of PESCO, the European Security Cooperation Arrangement. And I think the events in Sudan demonstrate why it is particularly important for a small country like Ireland to have security partners, because we did rely on EU mechanisms to assist us to evacuate our citizens. No small country, in fact no big or medium-sized country, can do these things on their own, and the fact that we had the assistance of France and Spain made a big difference, and is one of the many reasons why I think security cooperation is in the interests of our citizens. I want to join others in expressing my solidarity with the people of Sudan and what they're facing at the moment. And in relation to our own citizens, the Taoiseach gave us a briefing today at Cabinet about the efforts that are being undertaken to enable Irish citizens and their immediate family members, their husbands, wives and children, to be evacuated to Ireland should they wish to do so. We think there's about 150 still in Sudan, mainly in the Khartoum area. Some want to be evacuated, some don't, but that work is still ongoing. Not familiar with that EU funding, Deputy, so I can't answer. I know, but I don't know the answer to every question, I'm afraid, Deputy, and I'm not familiar with any EU funding of that nature. Just in relation to the Consultative Forum on International Security Policy, as has been referenced earlier, the Taoiseach announced last week that the government plans for a consultative forum on international security policy. The forum will take place in June and will aim to build a deeper understanding of the threats faced by the state and the links to and between our foreign security and defence policies. It will focus on a wide range of issues, including Ireland's efforts to protect the rules-based international order through peacekeeping and crisis management, disarmament and non-proliferation, international humanitarian law and conflict prevention and peace building, as well as allowing for a discussion on Ireland's policy of military neutrality. The forum will also provide an opportunity to examine the experiences and policy choices of other partners in responding to the new security environment in Europe. The international security environment has changed significantly over the past year, and we've seen that in relation to Ukraine. The Consultative Forum will allow for an open and informed discussion on issues involved and will provide a unique opportunity to bring together a wide range of stakeholders from the foreign policy, security and defence community, as well as civil society, political representatives, academics and other relevant bodies, as well as engagement with members of the broader public. We believe that we need to have a serious and honest conversation about international security policy, options available to the state and the implications of each of these, as well as examining ways in which we can work with and learn from other European and international partners. The forum will have one overall chairperson, tasked with directing and overseeing the discussions, and the Taoiseach has confirmed that Louise Richardson, a highly respected president of the Carnegie Corporation and former Vice-Chancellor of Oxford University, has kindly agreed to take on this important role. The consultative forum will take place in 3 different locations in June. 22nd of June in UCC, 23rd of June in University of Galway, 26th and 27th of June in Dublin Castle. The forum will be open to the general public, with opportunities to attend in person or virtually and to make written submissions, and further details will be made available in the coming weeks. I should say that a couple of people referenced a Citizens' Assembly. The Taoiseach floated the idea of a Citizens' Assembly, and it's okay to float ideas. I do it too, as does everyone in this House, but ultimately on consideration decided not to make that proposal, and no proposal for a Citizens' Assembly was made to government. A decision was made to have a consultative forum instead. In relation to energy security, I think we've good energy security in Ireland. We have our ports, and a very significant announcement made today in terms of investing in Ross Airport in particular. We have electricity interconnection with the UK. We have gas interconnection with the UK, and we're now developing a electricity interconnector between France and Ireland, and we'll need more interconnection to improve our security in the period ahead. Deputy Smith is absolutely right. Underwater cables and pipelines are a security issue, more so than ever, given what's been happening with Gulf Stream and given what's been happening with so-called scientific vessels in our waters. Crucially, part of what's going to have to change is design, making sure that future cables that are laid are much harder to interfere with and much harder to tamper with, and that was a big part of our discussions in Ostend yesterday, and also stepping up the capabilities of our Navy, our radar and our aerial surveillance to monitor what's happening in our exclusive economic zone. In relation to briefings for opposition leaders, that's something that I'm going to ask my Secretary General to carry out a review of. As things stand, security briefings, even for ministers and for the Taoiseach, are done largely on an ad hoc basis. We don't have a formalised structure like exists in other states, and we need to give that consideration. We also need to give consideration to what the rules around it were, and if there was any breach of confidence with regard to any security briefing, what the consequences would be. So all those things would have to be taken into account, because one thing that never leaks, in my experience, is anything to do with national security, and were that to change, there'd have to be very serious consequences. Just on Deputy Smith's comments, absolutely agree with what he had to say about Republican and Loyalist paramilitaries, and I think he makes a valid point in terms of Garda resources for the border counties. Need to take account of the fact that paramilitaries are still active. There are no plans, though, at present for any new barracks to be constructed.